Dr. Dave back with you. I'm really sorry I haven't done a video in a long time, but you know, I constantly remember things about these killers and how they've affected my life, and recently I've started remembering, you know, almost every girl that I ever met in my life or dated, they took them. Yeah, Frank even listed them for me. The last time I saw him back in the 90s, he described these different girls that I had met and said that they were his girlfriends now, or his girls. We took them, is what he would say. And all these girls came up missing persons, and some of them he took them right out from in front of me. And there was one case where they actually walked in the bedroom when I was in a girl's bedroom talking to her, and told me that she was their girlfriend and what was I doing there in their house, and they made me leave. and as I was leaving, she yelled out to me, "Call the police, they're going to kill me." You know, I wish I could remember some of these girls' names. Anyway, today what I want to tell you about is the Concerned Citizen letter. I was looking at it last night and I started thinking, and I remember Frank showing me the Concerned Citizen letter and that key to the cipher that comes with it, the 408 cipher, the one that Don and Betty Harden solved. Now, Don Harden was not the Zodiac killer, and neither was Betty, okay? Just because they liked to solve puzzles, that made them good at solving this cryptogram. Now, Frank told me in Mexico that he wanted that cryptogram to be solved, and he made it very simple. He also told me that he made others that were so complicated they would never solve them without a key, and even if they had a key, they couldn't solve them unless they had him there to explain to them how to use the key. Now, he also said that some of his cryptos were completely fake. He just jumbled a bunch of symbols together, and they really don't mean anything. They were just about getting attention and keeping the police focused on the fact that he was writing these cryptograms that they couldn't solve. Now, Frank told me that he told the press that his identity was in that 408 cipher, but that he had lied about it. You know, I asked him, why'd you do that? And I don't remember what he told me, and I think it was the next day, and he pulled this thing out and showed it to me. Now, this is the key that he sent to this police sergeant. I don't know, maybe he sent it to the press with the police sergeant's name on it, but the guy's name was John Lynch. Let me just tell you about this this Concerned Citizen letter. I'll show it to you right here. It says, "Dear Sergeant," and he puts a square in there, "John Lynch." Now think about that name for a minute. We're going to get back to that. "I hope the enclosed key will prove to be beneficial to you in connection with the cipher letter writer." He's talking about the 408. "Working puzzles, cryptograms, and word puzzles is one of my pleasures. And I know that's true because I saw Frank working puzzles many times out in front of his house in Mexico City, and if I spoke to him when he was doing that, he would look at me like he wanted to kill me. No one was allowed to bother him when he was working a puzzle. And the Anglin brothers would come to his defense at that point also." And it says here, "Please forgive the absence of my signature or name, as I do not wish to have my name in the papers, and it could be mentioned by a slip of the tongue." And he came out with this really diabolical laugh about the slip of a tongue. And I remember several things about that. One, which I haven't remembered what it was yet, there was something on TV at the time. There was some comedian that was making jokes about slip of the tongue. And I can't remember what it was. That'll come to me. I'll have to make another video. that was part of what this indicated. And the other part, he says, best wishes, concerned citizen. He wants, Frank somehow told me that writing the name concerned citizen would make people think that Don Harden was the Zodiac killer because he was a concerned citizen who solved the cryptogram. Now, please forgive the absence of my signature or name, as I do not wish to have my name in the papers, and it could be mentioned by a slip of the tongue. I asked him, why wouldn't you want your name in the papers? And he said, well, I don't want to go around putting my name in the papers or anything. And he says, that's why I won't tell you my name. And I go, oh, okay. Never told me his name all the years I knew him. But the slip of the tongue thing has another meaning also. Dear Sergeant John Lynch. Okay, John Lynch, John Anglin. A slip of the tongue could make a mistake right there and tell who one of the Zodiac killers was. And John Lynch is an interesting name. Frank mentioned something about hanging people and lynching and that kind of thing. I don't remember what it was. Now, I've made some notes over here. This part of that concerned citizen letter, this is the last 18 characters. If you look at what's in there, there's a meth right there and pity at the end. Now, I mentioned something to him about that. He told me, do you see anything in here you recognize? And I go, I don't know, it says meth. I don't know, there's a drug called meth. And he goes, yeah, there's a drug called meth. And I go, in pity, and he goes, yeah, it's a pity, isn't it? And I go, yeah, it is, but I mean, you can take that for what it's worth. I'm not sure what he was trying to say there. So I've been reading a few things on the internet about who may have written the concerned citizen letter. And on this particular article I'm looking at, they tell you, well, it could have been someone who, it could have been Harden himself or someone who was trying to, I don't know, polish up Harden's view on this thing, but then they come up to this one and it says, let's say the key was sent by the Zodiac killer. Shouldn't he have been frustrated that someone solved his puzzle so soon? Well, first of all, Frank told me he wanted to be solved. How fast they did it didn't really matter to him. If he didn't know about the published solution, why could he only wait a week before spilling the beans? Waiting didn't have anything to do with it. Still, the card shows a few Zodiac-like qualities. Yeah, of course it does, because it was written by the Zodiac. What's important is, Frank told me that he sent that letter with one intent, with several different intents, but one was to make it look like Harden was the Zodiac killer. I mean, come on, a concerned citizen. Didn't Harden look like a concerned citizen when he solved the cipher? And think about this. There's only one person that could have come up with a key to the cipher one day after these guys solved the thing, and that's the guy that wrote it, because he already had the key. That made it simple. All he had to do was send it. And this guy, Morph, the Zodiac killer site, and this guy's got a really good site with a lot of information on it. I've sent him some messages, but he won't talk to me. He's in the business of, pumping information out there about the Zodiac killer. He doesn't want this case solved. A solution would, kind of kill his website. So he, through the Freedom of Information Act, demanded what the police had on this, and they send him what they had, and he got 2 blank pages. Now, the police, FBI or whoever, deleted those pages purposely, and everyone wants to know why. Well, I'm going to tell you why, what I think anyway, based on what Frank Morris told me back in the 70s and 80s. they got fingerprints off of that card that was sent, okay? So the FBI wrote the card. And I'm pretty sure they know it was Frank Lee Morris and the Anglin brothers. And Frank always told me, or told me once, that the reason that he and the Anglin brothers got by with everything they got by with was because J. Edgar Hoover was protecting them. Now that's in my book, My Dance with the Zodiac Killer. Which, if you don't have a copy, you need to get one. It shows you who the killers are. It shows you who the Phantom Killer was, the Escape from Alcatraz, D.B. Cooper. It's all there. There's even a little clever little code thing that I put in there for you so you feel like you got some, first hand from Frank Morris. And there's an explanation on the back about the whole thing. Now, let me just check my notes here, because I really want to make sure that I got everything across to you today. Yeah, those blank pages, I think they contained information about who the fingerprints belonged to, and they contain information about Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers. Because as I mentioned to you before, Frank said that the reason they got by with everything they got by with was because of J. Edgar Hoover. J. Edgar Hoover was the guy who built the FBI. He built Alcatraz, and he had an ego that was bigger than the room I'm sitting in. And he didn't want to admit that these guys had escaped from a prison that had been put on television so many times, saying that it was escape-proof. Now, I don't know, I just wish I could find a way to tell you this so you could picture it. I mean, just try to picture yourself sitting there beside of Frank Morris, the guy who wrote these things, and he's showing them to you and explaining them to you in clues and codes, because he doesn't want you to really understand what he's saying, but he wants you to figure it out years later. And the whole time you're watching the Anglin brothers kind of move around here and there trying to get behind you so they can kill you. I mean, what a life. But I'm going to get to the point. He said, when he sent that 408 cipher, that his identity was in it, and he lied. And then he pulls this thing up the next day or so and shows it to me and says, remember I told you my identity was in that cipher, but I really didn't put it in there? He goes, my identity is in here. And I go, what is this? And he says, this is a key to the cipher. And he laughs, that diabolical laugh, and says, I sent it to the police, or the press, whatever. He sent it to this John, the guy that I told you about, Sergeant John Lynch. Think about that name. A slip of the tongue, John Lynch, John Anglin. Okay? And the other slip of the tongue that he was talking about was the fact that Don Harden was on everyone's tongue at the time because he had solved that cipher. So a slip of the tongue would say the name Don Harden, and Don Harden would look like he was the Zodiac Killer, and that's what Frank wanted to happen. Now, I have something very special for you here. Now, I'm, putting on my professional wrestler persona because I like to do that. It's kind of weird I'm talking to my telephone, okay? And there's no one here to talk back. So I'm just doing my thing. I should charge for this. I'm going to show you the identity of the Zodiac Killer in this key to the 408 cryptogram. Now, look right here, and this is what Frank told me. He said, what do you see there? And I said, well, it looks like a Q. And he goes, well, and what does Q stand for? And I go, what do you mean, Q? What does it stand for? He says, I said, well, I don't know. I was a kid in school. To me, first thing you'd think about Q was everybody was making jokes about queers. No offense to people out there who are gay. Okay? And he made me say that. I wouldn't say it, and he made me say it. And he goes, yeah, that could mean something. Well, I think what he was referring to was the fact that he had this sexual relationship going on with the Anglin brothers that was all about necrophilia. So that's the beginning of his identity. And when I first looked at this cryptogram, I was like, I remember him telling me that Q, but that, so what, And I started looking at this, I'm like, come on, Doc, get your head out. Frank Lee Morris. Okay? Do I need to say any more? And just to kind of firm things up here, if you look down here, you will see the name Lee, spelled backwards, L-E-E. Frank Lee Morris. And take a look at this. F J Q. You got any idea what that could mean? FJQ. Frankie and Johnny were lovers. Q. Frank, you're incredible. You're incredible. I mean, I think the rest of his name is in here too, probably, or John's or Clarence. I'm going to look at this some more. But take a look at it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed it.